Good evening and welcome to Encounter Live. It's great to have you with us watching you'd be glad to know anybody watching in the United Kingdom, you'll be glad to know that it's pouring with rain and it's murky, it's cloudy over Bill's Mothers. It's just like a summer's day in Derby. It's just horrible. And well, can we show them? And if we can.
I don't know if you can do that. No, we've got our washing now, Dave.
We have washing there.
So
Everybody
bad.
else washing, don't they?
Yeah, we've got to be in
So
because
look,
it's raining. It's so
pouring with rain. So we've got the washing inside the house.
Don't need to tell people.
And because people don't think we'd have washing inside the house on a rainy day.
Literally, you're airing our clean laundry.
So
live.
yeah, by the way, the pastor we have to wash our clothes as well. Yeah, and when it's wet, apparently, because we're men and women of God, it still rains on the righteous. So anyway, let's move that back a little bit there. Hope that's better. Right, we'll link up to Encounter page, and then we're going to talk about heroes from the Bible. So that's going to be good tonight, and it's lots going on in our lives right now, Naomi, isn't there? So George is off school at the moment, so I've been homeschooling. What was interesting about that was I helped George do his homeschooling this morning, and most of it went okay. But I was in a 5-year-old's English kind of worksheet, and I managed to get it wrong.
You did? And then I got home and I was like, "What's this you've been doing?" And he's like, "Well, look." And so the teacher here had to explain it to the, how old are you? 44?
Yeah.
44-year-old.
So we put the letters in the wrong place, haven't we? Basically. Also, just to so I'm realising now that homeschooling is it's hard work, I tell you.
You're getting a glimpse into how hard my life really is.
I'm just trying to share this onto the Encounter page so we can get that going as well. Also, if Naomi goes off, it's because we got a Thai food takeaway on the way in. So, which we don't do all the time, by the way. But we have done it tonight because it's raining and we can't be bothered.
There wasn't much
cook.
food in the
There's
fridge.
nothing in there.
Only because I haven't been shopping.
So, right then, okay, so here we go. Right, we're going to be talking today about this whole thing which we find a lot in the Psalms, but we're not actually going to spend much time in the Psalms, that in order to be a Christian, that you've got to be perfect, then you can become a Christian. That kind of philosophy. We've got a cat getting in the way of the camera. Thank you very much, Bilbo. And
do you have to be perfect before you can come to God? Is that the question?
What is the thing if God calls you to do something that's outside of your character? What's the thing that you struggle with the most?
What, me?
Yeah.
Talking to people.
I was going to say that, yeah. New people in the church.
New people,
even.
yeah, like one-on-one. Stick me in front of a crowd, put me on a
Yeah.
stage, I can be a clown, I can sing songs, I can act, like,
I
whatever.
think sometimes some people think that you're distant when you're not.
Don't mind, but you asked me to go and talk to somebody one-on-one. I am the shyest person you're ever going to meet. Yeah.
So is that something that you feel the Lord may challenge you on?
No, not May, does,
Oh,
on
right,
a weekly basis.
And so some of those things can be daunting. And I think also it's a right time to look at this topic because there's a lot of people in the UK and even here in Spain, even though the restrictions aren't really changing a lot here right now, but people are starting to come out of lockdown. And I know in the UK, there's a picture of a couple of guys sitting outside a pub on the front page. Somebody sent it me. I don't read the Daily Star, believe it or not, but somebody sent me a photo of the Daily Star. It's from, actually, my friend from the Daily Mirror sent it me. And he said, "Dave, you got to see this for the radio." And it was two guys sitting outside having a full English breakfast in the snow. And the snow was coming down, and they were just sitting there. And the headline was "Living the Dream, Dave." So my friend Steve White, who was a reporter for the Daily Mirror in Manchester, he sent me that. So anyway, so God does call us to do things that are outside our comfort zone. And believe it or not, I am actually quite a shy person. I've learned how to speak to people. I've learned how to kind of connect and go and actually get beyond my shyness. But I was really, really shy before I actually became a Christian. Do you feel as if you can't complete the tasks that God has given you to do? And are you fearful or do you have anxiety about what God may be calling you to do? Well, we're going to look at some Bible characters today and just have a few moments in the scripture, just for about half an hour, and see exactly what God called these guys to do. And all of them had an issue with it. And these really, if we were to do all the ones in the scriptures, we'd be here all night because there's so many. So we're going to start off with Isaiah 6 verse 5. And Isaiah says this, or Isaiah,
Isaiah.
When I went to America the first time, I was in a church in California, and they said, "We're going to turn to Isaiah." I'm like,
oh, but then they can't do the joke. They can't do the whole one Isaiah than the other. Ah, poor Americans.
And Isaiah said this: "Woe to me, I am ruined." I've offended an American today while on the radio.
Did you?
Jamie Joyce comes on from New York, and she said, because we were doing this quiz thing, and she said, "You're letting me think that I'm in control of this, aren't you? But you're really controlling it." I said, "It's what we do in the world. The rest of us let you guys think that you're running the world." But you're not.
You're so naughty.
Anyway, woe to me, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. So, first of all, Isaiah gets a call, and the first thing that comes into his mind, Naomi, is that woe to me, which basically means, what can I offer? You know, whoa, this is not for me. Go and call somebody else, Lord. And he says, I have unclean lips. I don't speak very well. So I'm not holy in my talk. My talk compared to God is unholy. And I live among people of unclean lips. And what I found amazing about that is such the focus on talk. You know, quite often you can tell a lot about somebody's heart by the way in which they talk. Because the Bible says that at the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so... But then he goes on to say, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. So there's kind of that weighing up that he has to do. Many of us know about Isaiah. He has a book in the major prophets section of the Bible. And if you're looking at it now, you know exactly where it is. He existed during one of the greatest times of upheaval in Israel's history. His name lives on in christenings in children today. And I think this probably got a bit of an American slant on it here. But when we first meet him, he encounters God and the angels. His knees buckle. He doesn't feel up to the task. And he basically feels completely out of his depth. He's like, this is too much for me. There's no way that God can use me. And as we witness in the passage above, Isaiah knows that he has to come, not to come close to the perfection. Sorry, let me read that again. Isaiah knows that he has not come close to perfection. And so when you come close face to face with God, he realizes, wow, I'm unclean. And I've got unclean lips. I've got friends who also speak as bad as I do, and he realizes it. And I think sometimes when we come to God, we always want to make everybody else say, actually, you know, you need to change this in your life and you need to get better. But a lot of people recognise that already. Quite often you want to say to somebody. I've gone to say to somebody because I felt the Lord challenged me to say something to them, and they've already felt it themselves anyway.
Yeah.
So.
But do you think about how we talk about, like, when you meet with God, sometimes you notice that uncleanness that you hadn't noticed before. And I think we've just been having our apartment painted. Yeah. And obviously we know that the walls need painting. We can see that there are marks on the wall.
This one hasn't been done yet.
But it's not until you actually see the new clean wall that you notice how dirty it actually was. And I think it's a little bit like that when we come to God. Yes, we know that we have sin in our life. But it's not until we actually encounter God and meet his purity that we really see the extent to which we are unclean in that sense. Yeah. And it can be quite shocking sometimes. It's like, oh my goodness, how did I manage to let that wall get so filthy? Well, because life is dirty. Yeah. And so how did I manage to get so sinful? Well, because life. I'm tempted to sin all the time, and I probably do it quite a lot. But when I come in to meet with God, it's true, like just like Isaiah, it's all like, oh gosh, I'm a person of unclean lips. Oh my goodness, what have I been doing? And we suddenly realise, he's really perfect, and we just aren't. And it can be overwhelming. It
is. So anyway, guys, do feel free to share a comment below. Share the video with any friends that you have. This is a Bible study, by the way, and we're grateful for you watching. And feel free to share it with anybody as well. And yeah, you're right now, because in Isaiah 6 verse 7, later on, the verse later, says this: see, this has touched your lips. And it's an angel basically putting what the Bible says, burning coal on Isaiah's lips. Well, it's not a great experience, but this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin is atoned for. Now, of course, that's before the sacrifice of Jesus. So for a person to hear that from an angel, it would have to be from an angel, you know what I mean? Because like they've got no kind of teaching apart from their sacrificial, where the Jewish would bring the Day of Atonement. So,
I don't think it's
yeah.
interesting that he uses a burning coal, which would have meant, I'm guessing here, would have meant something to him, because the way that they would atone for their sin was by a burnt offering. So I don't know, but that would be an interesting thing to study and
Yeah.
to look into.
What I like about this as well is that God says, yeah, I know. No big surprise to me. I know you've got unclean lips, so we're going to deal with it, and then we're going to use you. And so whatever you feel that's in your life that's hindering you and holding you back from being used by God, then really it's nothing to God, is it?
But look what Isaiah
speak
was
to
called
us,
to be.
yeah.
He was called to be a prophet, to speak the words of God. And he himself, in his own natural state, is like, but I'm a man of unclean lips. What I say is not good necessarily. And so God's saying, that thing that is your weakness, I'm going to use as a strength. Isn't that
And
so
haven't we seen that
interesting?
time and time again when somebody who's had a massive issue with drugs has got free from it? God has helped them to get free from it, and they've experienced that breakthrough. And they've now been the one, God has called them into that ministry. A lot of Teen Challenge and stuff in the UK that are doing that. Secondly, Moses. Similar to Isaiah, the cat's trying to fight with me here. Have you got a takeaway there? Is that
No,
all right?
yeah.
No. All right.
No.
Okay. Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent. There we are. There's hope for me. In the past, whenever anybody has a go, if you're speaking, just say, you know what, Moses, one of the greatest men on earth, wasn't eloquent. Like he said his weakness was he wasn't eloquent enough. So quite often I've been in prayer meetings where it almost becomes a competition as to who can pray the most eloquent prayers. And people go into this kind of like grandiose talk, don't they? Where they're like, oh God, my Father. Now, if you do talk with that accent, that's absolutely fine. You're being natural. I'm not having a go. But I'm just saying sometimes that you get people who come in literally from a council estate suddenly become Shakespeare when they're praying, you know? Do you know what I mean?
Which is fine, unless it's because we're feeling the pressure to have to be perfect or say the exact
Jesus,
set
wherefore
right.
art thou, Jesus?
Not Shakespeare, yeah.
And so it's like, and I think then the pressure comes on people. And Moses said, actually, you know what? I'm not eloquent. That's great, isn't it? Because if you're not eloquent, then welcome to the club. Neither was Moses. And he says, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. Again, Naomi, it's talking about speech again. And what was Moses' job? Speech, wasn't it? So,
However, he did, God did send Aaron to help him.
what's that?
I think that Smith Harper's clearing up a
The
pronunciation
Isaiah.
difference. That's got to be Isaiah and
Yeah.
Isaiah. Yeah.
Thank you, Smith.
I'll have a look at that later. Thank you.
Make sure you come and see us in Calahonda when you're back over. Okay. The Lord said to him, who gave... I love this. Right, Moses. He says this. Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight, makes them blind? Is it not me? In fact, is it not I? I was just saying like a Derby way. Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will speak and will teach you what to say. And I just love that because Moses comes and he's obviously, this is a massive issue to him. It's not something that he just is like coming up with a quick excuse not to do it. It's something that's obviously been burning on him for a long time, maybe even years, that, that he wouldn't be able to be eloquent enough to speak on God's behalf. And God comes along and says, I'm the maker. I made your mouth, so I'll be the one to decide whether I'll use it or not. I really like that. And he challenges him on that area. And so it's almost like, you ring somebody, you buy a vacuum cleaner, it doesn't work. And they say, actually, well, I do know how it works because we were the ones that made it. And so we're going to tell you what you're doing wrong. And so God says, I love it. He says, who gave human beings their mouths? I know all about this. I created you. And Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord, please send someone else. And there's a thing, wasn't in church not a while ago.
Excusez-moi.
Yeah. Oh, we got the takeaway coming. All right.
Voilà.
Takeaway's arriving. I'll have to go in the kitchen and we'll stick it in the microwave. Okay. Is it on its way? Yeah, I've got a Thai green curry on the way. Not that I need it. Well, I do. I'm actually quite hungry. But anyway, so we see that there's a thing in the church notice board a while ago, and it said this, that we are mourning somebody else. Somebody else passed away this week. And we're really going to miss them because somebody else set up the sound desk. Somebody else set the chairs out. Somebody else cleaned the church. Somebody else did the welcome team. Somebody else made the tea and coffee. You get the gist of what I'm saying. But Moses said, send somebody else. Moses and God go toe to toe in the desert after Moses had been raised in Pharaoh's household during a time where Pharaoh killed all male infants. And so we see here, and we know the outcome, Moses becomes this great man of God who speaks on God's behalf at the burning bush and asks him, and God appears to Moses out there in the form of a burning bush and says, Moses, and asks him to go to Egypt to tell Pharaoh to set my people free. By this point, Pharaoh, in power during Moses' childhood, likely had died, but this doesn't really comfort Moses. And so what I found amazing about that second, Isaiah, he says, I can't speak, Lord, I'm of unclean lips. Moses says, Lord, I can't speak, I'm not eloquent. And in each case, God deals with their weakness. And it's actually their weakness that God uses to reach the people. You know, some of the things that we worry about the most, some of the things that we are concerned about the most are the very things that God wants to use in our lives. And it is absolutely true, because I can fully relate to this. When I first went to Coventry as an assistant pastor, I knew that I had speech issues. I couldn't say my THs very well, and I still can't. So I was saying instead of th. And I wasn't using my tongue, and I still get it wrong now quite often. And so I took elocution lessons with Dorothy, and she helped me. And I remember having to read Psalm 23 out loud to her as I took elocution lessons. And I know that my speech isn't perfect, but you know, the irony of all of that is that I'm a radio presenter and I'm a pastor. And most of what I do is based on communication and speech. And so the very thing that I struggled with, God has used in my life. And I've seen it here with Isaiah, and I've seen it with Moses. God uses the very things that they struggle with, and he uses it for his glory. Thirdly, the spies of Israel. Numbers 13, 31 to 33. See, I told you THs. 33. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad reports about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. And all the people saw there are great size. We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak that came from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in their eyes, and we looked the same to them. So the spies come back and say, we can't do it. We cannot do this. Picture this. You wandered the desert for a while, and your people just escaped Egypt after 400 years of slavery, talking about the Jews here, as Israel. You approached the land of God, God's promise, you only to find that people already inhabit it. So you've been wandering for 40 years after slavery, and you finally get to a place where you feel that you know this is where God has called us to be, and you get there and bam, there's already a whole load of people already there. And these people happen to be pretty big. They're not the sort of people you want to be fighting with. And as we see in the passage above, they didn't like what they saw. The context, Nephilim were giant people. Some people have supposed that they are demon-human hybrids. Others said that they simply towered over people with weird DNA. But nonetheless, whatever you make of them, we realise that these are giants. All except for two of them. Caleb and Joshua were the only two who didn't come back complaining. These two spies attempted to sway the rest of the camp to proceed and enter the land, knowing God would not lead their sides. Unfortunately, Israel rebelled. Literally, they formed a rebellion and went with the majority. Because of this, God prevented a great number of the Israelites from entering the promised land, including the 10 unfaithful spies. And they just said, it's too much for us. This we cannot do. And I wonder whether you've been in that position as well, where you've said, this is just too much. I'm talking...
Yes, got a bit wet.
The takeaway is ready for when we finish this, and I can smell it.
Got a bit wet out there.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
it's pouring with rain here. You just wouldn't believe the weather in Spain. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain.
On my head.
I'm talking now about the spies. They come back, they see the Nephilim, and they come back and say, we can't do this. And two spies say, yes, we can. But the ones that actually, what I found amazing about his name is the ones that said we can't do it, never did. And that God doesn't let them enter in to the new land. And again, when you read that story, you think this is, we know the story so well, but if you think about it, they spent years in slavery, 40 years wandering the desert. They get to the place where God has said, this is your land, and there's all these giants in it. It's like, Lord, anything else? So the spies of Israel. And fourthly and finally, Gideon. I remember preaching about Gideon when I was a young guy, when I first became a Christian, about 17. And Gideon was basically hiding out in the wine press from the Midianites. And he's there, and he's scared, he's full of anxiety, he's worried. And an angel turns up, the angel of the Lord, it could be Jesus, that's number one. But the angel turns up and says to him, rise, you mighty man of valor. I think that's the King James Version. And go in the strength you have, he says. Basically, I want you to go and take on the Midianites. Gideon responded saying, pardon me, Lord. In other words, you what, Lord?
I think you got the wrong guy.
You got the right person. He says, I am the weakest in my clan. I'm the weakest family in the weakest clan, and I'm the weakest in my family. In other words, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. And he's just basically saying, I am the weakest of the weakest. Why are you calling me? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh. When we meet Gideon in the Bible, we find him hiding out in the winepress. Not the greatest start for a leader. He's worried, he's panicking. And in the time of the judges, Israel had fallen into a cyclical pattern. They would sin, an enemy would take over, they would cry out to God, and God would appoint a judge and drive the enemy out. And it went on like that, time after time. But Gideon doesn't exactly like this calling of his. He comes from a lesser tribe and doesn't have the great position. And what I like about this is that God looks at Gideon and he speaks about what he's going to be like. He looks at, because as you look at Gideon, you think, he's hiding in the wine press, he's hiding away from the Midianites. It's not exactly a picture of a mighty warrior or mighty man of valor.
God sees his potential, and he sees what he can be. And
Yeah.
I mean, as a teacher, we often say, it's important to speak positively, because if you tell someone that they're good, they'll eventually believe you. If you tell someone they can do it, eventually they're going to believe you. So the way that we speak about ourselves and about other people is really important, because we believe what we hear, we believe what we say. And if we can see God's potential in ourselves and in others, and we can obviously not be dishonest and untruthful. I mean, listen, I'm not going to be a trapeze artist any day soon. If God calls me to that, I'll be very surprised. But, I mean, we need to see what God says about us, and we need to start to believe that and start to
I remember when Gordon
ways.
Neal said, I know the things God has called me to, and being a singer is one of them.
Exactly.
We all know,
What we're
and I'm not
not
saying that God's going to suddenly make you a singer when you can't sing. What I am saying is some of the things that you see as a weakness and a hindrance. And I just spoke earlier because I said about my struggling with the words, with the letters TH, and when I went to Coventry I had elocution lessons, and the irony is that the person that one of the weaknesses I felt was speaking, I'm now making a living out of radio presenting and preaching. And that sounds really bad, I'm not making a living out of preaching, you know what I mean, but it's my calling, and I see it with
You do
Isaiah.
like to talk, though.
I do like to talk.
It is one of your favourite things to do.
Yeah. Just nice to get word in edgeways every now and then. So you can imagine Gideon's trepidation, especially because we first find him hiding from Israel's enemies. Gideon's story shows, and it even goes on in more, and you think, okay, I've got the gist now, Lord, I know you're calling me. And then God says, well, all those thousands of men you've got, I want you just to narrow it down a little bit. It takes away those, gets to about, and you think, okay, take a few away. How many? 300? You want me to go and fight the Midianites with 300? And God says, yeah, and he wins, because it's God. And so you might think that it's a daunting task that God is calling you to. You may say, I can't do this, I can't. And actually, you may even say, I can't be a Christian, because it seems like what's required of you is so big and so daunting. And my advice in that situation would be this: just take one step at a time. And just say, actually, you know what, I'm going to take one day at a time.
I knew it. I was waiting for
I know, it's my favourite one, that is. But there's so much truth in that. Look, the reason God gave us 24 hours is because we can't cope. I remember reading what's the guy who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People? James, is it Carnegie? Anyway, he wrote another book about leadership, and he said, I think he is a Christian, but he did say, the reason why we have 24 hours is that it's just enough time for us to cope with what we need to do, and then we go to bed and put it to bed. And don't think and be daunted about all, if God
That's
was to
why-
reveal everything to you, what he wants you to do, you'd probably run a while like Jonah.
Yeah, and that's why, like we've spoken on previous weeks about grace and mercy and all of these things that God gives us, because it's not by works so that no man may boast, but also I think it's not by works because that way we're less stressed. Our salvation is based on our belief in him and our trusting in him. And so if we're concerned that we're not going to be a good enough Christian and we're never going to make it to heaven, we don't have to worry about that because that is a free gift from God.
Yeah.
It's something that we can accept from him through his mercy and his grace. But we are called to good works and we are called to a race of holiness and to try to become more like Christ. And like you say, we just take that day by day and we start to study. And there is a scripture in Corinthians that's often misquoted, is that God won't give you more than you can handle. And this is kind of difficult when people quote this at you, when you feel like you are having to deal with more than you can handle. But it actually doesn't say that. It says that he will not be tempted beyond that which you can stand, because God is always there to give you a way out. He's there to help you withstand temptation. So even if we're feeling overwhelmed by what we're needing to do and what we feel that God is calling us to, we can bring that to God and say, Lord, are you sure about this? Are you sure you've got the right? I might need help. Aaron, God gave Moses Aaron. It was too much for Moses to handle by himself, and so God gave him a helper. It's like we can be honest with God about that.
Quite often that other people put so much pressure on us to change quicker than actually the Lord is doing, and even our own selves, we put so much pressure on ourselves to change. And maybe we just need to be, as the Bible says, in step with the Spirit. So we're just saying, Lord, I want to go at your pace, and I want you to help me as we go, rather than me try to do it all in my own strength or listen to what everybody else's opinion is of me. What is it that you want? And so don't be daunted by what God's calling you to do. Don't be daunted about even thinking about becoming a Christian and getting to know God more, because it is one step at a time. It is one day at a time.
Hour by hour sometimes.
And even when you think you've actually got there and you think, I've actually learned quite a lot, then the Lord reveals, hang on a minute. No, there's so much more that I've got for you to learn about. And so I think, and if you meet somebody and they kind of make it sound like they have actually arrived, I'd be very, very suspicious, wouldn't you, of that, because there's one person that I know is perfect, and that's Jesus. The rest of us are trying. So,
saying something.
Smith, the Christian way is a journey. We must first decide the journey is necessary, and then various waypoints. I can't see the whole.
Then various waypoints are unfolded as we proceed.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying, Smith. Thank you very much for that. And there are times when the Lord's revealed something to me. If He'd revealed it a year earlier, I would have done a Jonah. So, not jumped in the sea or anything, but.
I don't know, you always tell me you like boats.
Yeah, I do. Anyway, so it's been great having you watching us. If you are just tuning in now, this video will be available in a few minutes online, and it'll be available for all eternity on Facebook, until Facebook goes under anyway. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Encounter Live. We'll be back with more church, hopefully this Sunday, all being well, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. So, do you want to say anything? Do you want to pray?
Just pray. Yeah. I would like to pray. Okay. Yeah, Lord, I want to come before you today. Thank you for the inspiration that we can get from the people that you've written about or that have been written about in the Bible. We can see that there's such honesty there, and we see them in their good times and their bad times, in their weaknesses and in their strengths. And help us, Lord, to take comfort from the fact that you know exactly what we are and who we are and what we're like, and that you give us the strength to be able to deal with what comes. And Lord, if we need a helper, we were talking a few weeks ago about having a helper and a support, being a helper. Help us to find that right person or to be that person.
Yes, Lord.
If there are people today who are struggling with all of the pressures that are on them, I ask you for you to give them the strength that is supernatural and a peace that passes all understanding. And Lord, if there are people that are maybe calling out to you for the first time, I pray, Jesus, that they would meet with you and that they would know that they've encountered your presence.
Yeah.
I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Naomi. Great prayer. And all being well, we'll be back with more Encounter Live, same time, same channel next week, and we'll see you soon.
You look like a Bond villain.
Come, Mr. Bond. You enjoy killing as much as I do. I do, yeah, don't I? Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Come, Mr. Bond. Take care,
Oh,
everybody. Have a
gosh,
good
bye.
one. Bye.